Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. We've got a lot to go over today. Looking at the new commander skills, before the free respecs run out, I do want to give you my recommendations for a standard commander build. That won't apply to every battleship, but the main idea is going to be a very good battleship build that's going to apply to most battleships for most players. That's the whole idea here today. But first, let's talk about those free respecs and how to get them. It's only available for a couple more days here, so what you're gonna have to do is go to the news section and then go to current update, and then you're gonna come down here to commander skills update. You'll see all the differences here, and then right at the bottom, you're gonna see the activation to participate in the free respecs individually. So that's when you're in port, the free respec will be there for you, as well as a button here that will reset all your commanders. If you have a lot of commanders, this can be a good way to save some time. Now, the reason we're focused on battleships so much is that the skills for cruisers and destroyers, I don't really think move the needle really that much on most of those ships. There's a few, like Napoli in particular, that get a massive buff out of those secondaries, but really doesn't affect many other cruisers in the game. Whereas battleships, I do think have changed, even the standard build. Now, before we take a look at a new build, it's important to remember what the old standard battleship build was going to be. For me personally, it looked like this. The 4-point skills, you take extra heals, you take concealment, and you take fire prevention. These are just going to help you stay alive and help you get more impactful salvos, especially concealment expert. Just any salvo from a battleship that's from an undetected battleship is just more valuable than a salvo from a detected battleship. More surprise there, more likelihood of catching a broadside and doing good damage there. The extra healing, of course, was great for a lot of those longer battles, since you are going to be tanking and the focus of a lot of incoming damage. Basic survivability reduced that incoming damage even further, and then of course Adrenaline Rush was an excellent skill to take just to get some reload as you lose your HP. For me, these 3-point and 4-point skills were the foundation of that old standard battleship build. I would break out and run secondary builds at times. I would even try some crazy stuff with close quarters combat. I'd even try the old Furious skill and try and make those pushes work, but they were very situational and often didn't work. These skills will be valuable in basically every game you're going to play in and will always help you perform better. And for me personally, the tier 2 and tier 1 upgrades, I didn't really care about these too much. You could really run whatever you want to. These 3 and 4 pointers were the foundation for me. So that's what we need to know. We need to realize that a standard build for me used to have fire prevention, again, tankiness, reducing the amount of fire damage we take and number of fires on our ship, and concealment expert giving us that 10% reduced detection. It's just excellent for dipping into concealment, not taking as much damage, as well as potentially surprising people with salvos. Very good skill to have. And then emergency repair expert to get us up to those 5 normal heals on a battleship. Really useful skill to have in those longer games. You can really carry out some games with this upgrade. And then Adrenaline Rush was giving us DPM. So now that we have these new upgrades, what are we gonna change? For me personally, the 1-pointers really haven't changed all that much for me. Consumable Specialist can be useful on something like a Bourgogne, where we want to get that speed boost and reload booster back. But overall, 1 and 2-pointers still really haven't changed for me. You run whatever you want to. For me personally, Montana, something might want Gun Feeder, for example. Turret Traverse is nice to have. Brisk can be nice on a lot of these ships. Vigilance, just not to eat as many torpedoes. But for me, a bit of a sleeper pick here is the AA upgrade. I've been noticing this has helped me stay alive a ton in this new patch. 40% reduced consumable reload time is amazing. As long as your AA is active, you're gonna get your consumables back much quicker. That's your damage control and that's your heal. It's very, very nice to have, especially if you're someone who happens to maybe be the target of a carrier a little more often than others. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a CC and someone will recognize me and focus me. It's also because I just like to push in. So if you like to push in, you're probably going to be the focus of carriers. So this is going to help you stay alive in those scenarios. Up next for 3 points, of course, we're going to take Adrenaline Rush still. It's still just too good. For me personally, I found super heavy AP to just be a bit of a bait still. The extra reduction to fire tick damage is nice, but the fire extinguishing time going up by 25% is just a no-go for me. This is just far too much damage to eat for not enough of a benefit. 7.5% alpha tier AP, not worth it in my opinion. If you're gonna get that dev strike with a battleship, you would have got it with or without this skill. Someone's made a mistake, gone broadside, and you've had some good RNG anyway. So for me personally, it is too much of a bait. So I would still go Adrenaline Rush first, And then I would still go fire prevention first. This would be my first 10 points. I'm going to go through this slowly just so that those of you that don't have a 21-point commander, of which I know most don't, because it is very difficult to get that many, 10 points, I would do this. You know, you can move the 1 and 2 pointers around, keep that in mind. But my first 3-pointer is pretty much always going to be Adrenaline Rush, and my first 4-point skill is pretty much always going to be fire prevention. Up next, 4-pointer skill, we're going to go to a 14-point commander, and I'm going to take Concealment Expert. I really do value that on just a standard build. There's going to be a lot of times where if I go full secondaries or something, I'm going to switch out of concealment even. Just because I know I'm pushing in, I'm always going to be detected, it's not going to help me. But on a standard build, I really do think Concealment Expert is very, very useful. And then for me personally, we would actually go with a 3-pointer skill, a new one here, Improved Repair Party Readiness. That's going to give us an extra cooldown on our repair party, which is decent. But we're here for that extra consumable charge of the repair party. 2 million potential damage, especially at higher tier 8 and above, I would say, isn't too difficult to get. And this essentially just gives you that 5th heal in the games where you would need it. It's not going to give you the heal in games where it wouldn't have been useful anyway. So what this does is essentially saves us 1 skill point. It gives us all 5 of our heals for a refund of 1 skill point. We're no longer needing to spend 4 points to get that 5th heal. We're essentially getting it in the games we need it for 3 points. So that's going to open us up to take something else, a different 4-point skill, or potentially take some more lower tier skills that are going to buff our ship in different ways. This here for 17 points is giving us what that old build did for 18 points, right? Like this is the old build, this is the new build. So we're saving a point. What are we going to put that in? Well, you might think, go even more healing. I've certainly tried that. Definitely some videos coming out soon. I tried it on Conqueror. You're going to see that tomorrow, which I meant to put up Monday, but I think it's just too important for me to talk about these commander skills on Monday. So we're bumping the Conqueror over to Tuesday. This way you guys have some time to actually implement these builds before the respecs go away. But for the most part, Emergency Repair Expert and Improved Repair Party Readiness is just overkill. You're probably not going to get to the 6th heal. It's a really long time on most battleships. The only ones that would really get there are things like Ohio with that improved reload. And for something like the Conqueror, for example, the super heals are going to heal back so much that most of the damage at the end, once you're gone through 3, 4, 5 of those super heals, is mostly going to be permanent damage anyway that you just can't heal back. So not really all that useful. So what are we left with? Well, we could start taking things like manual secondaries, but for my money, I think Furious is actually the skill to take on a standard build. If I have 21 points, this is my new build here. For Montana, for example, this is probably what I'm going to end up taking. The reason being, Furious gives us 10% reload time when a fire or flood is on our ship, and then it's only going to give us an extra 5% for every other fire or flood. So the value of Furious really is on that first fire or that first flood. That's why it's not a bad thing to be taking fire prevention here. We don't actually want to continually take more and more dots. We actually just want that first one, and that's it. I think that's the big problem with Furious in the past, is that initial buff wasn't quite enough. You had to take too many dots for this Furious skill to actually feel like a meaningful impact on your reload. Now this 10% is essentially like taking reload mod in your upgrades. So this is a really nice thing to have, that when you're on fire, you're just getting a 10% reload buff. And we're still tanky, keep in mind. We're still not eating double fires to our superstructures, we're still able to stay in concealment, and we are still able to get those 5 heals. So this is essentially the old standard build with the added effect of getting 10% reload when we're on fire. That's a really nice upgrade. It's not much, it's not massively different, but I don't think it should be. Going from an old standard build that's just trying to be a good jack of all trades build, it should also be pretty similar to that. And I think that's what we have here. But that's only if you have a 21-point commander. If you don't, well, you could start taking some other skills to buff you in other ways. But the really nice thing here is we essentially get what the old build gave us here for 17 points instead of 18 points. So you get that initial boost of performance that full 5 heals, full concealment, fire prevention build would give you a whole skill point earlier, which is nice for newer players or people grinding up lines. Now, the keen-eyed among you might have noticed we're now just missing out on basics of survivability. So there is a bit of a downside here. We're missing 15% fire flood duration time and technically 10% duration on our repair party and our heal. since this is giving us that 5th heal just without that extra 10%. But extra 10% there isn't that big of a deal personally, but reducing our flooding and fire by 15% is quite a bit. You'll know whenever I'm talking about this skill, we've got 2 other things to talk about. I'm always for this 2 out of 3 rule, and that goes for basic survivability, and it goes in our equipment here. This upgrade, Damage Control System Mod 2, and the flag here for fire extinguishing time. I want 2 out of the 3. Flag is just better, 20% instead of just the 15 like you get here. So I'm usually going to take the flag and either the upgrade or the commander skill. So since we haven't fit that into our commander, I'm going to take it on the upgrade slot, and we're still getting that upgrade. So our fires aren't lasting the full duration and we're going to burn out too quickly. That's the thing. We're still going to get the benefit out of Furious. You might be thinking, man, you're just reducing the amount of time you're actually going to be able to use Furious. But I disagree. I think the problem with full sending it on max fire duration with super heavy AP and not taking fire prevention, I think you're just going to die too quickly. Sure, you might be able to maximize it if you're camping the back, and that could work for you. But for me, I am playing more aggressive. So for me, that's not going to work. I still need these defensive tools while still getting the main benefit of Furious, which is that initial 10%. It doesn't really communicate it particularly well here, but trust me, 10% for that first fire or flood, and then every fire or flood after is only 5% more. So 2 fires or a fire and a flood would be 15% reload, not 20%, right? That's kind of the idea here. So it's that initial 10% that we want. So the difference really comes down to then, we're not able to take propulsion mod or steering gears here. That's now the difference, right? We still have the same fire flood duration now. We've just swapped out this upgrade. So for me, trading out 50% acceleration or 20% on our steering gears kind of sucks, but think about what we're getting in return. We're essentially trading that little bit of maneuverability for situational 10% reload. And to me, I think that's worth it. So that's what my build is changed to. We still have 5 heals. We still have full concealment. We still have fire prevention. We still have adrenaline rush. We still have the same fire and flood duration, even though we're not taking this. But what we are lacking now in the same build, the same standard tank build I used to run, is I no longer get prop mod. But in exchange, I get 10% damage output when I'm on fire. It is situational. So to me, that looks like a small improvement, but an improvement. And an extra little bit of flexibility here, which is nice to see. And just a general reduction for a nice base 18-point build is now 17 points to get that same effectiveness. Really cool. So I hope that makes sense. I have been thinking about it quite a bit since the patch released, trying to get that as clear and concise as I possibly can. Keep in mind, that's just a normal build. I'm not going to be running normal builds most of the time. I'm going to be trying things like this on my Ohio. I'm going to go for manual secondaries here. Maybe I'm going to still run the full tank build, full concealment, trying to get the most out of our main guns, and only have 9.5 kilometer secondaries. But, you know, we still get manual secondaries for those opportunities to push in. Our hybrid build now looks like this, allowing us to take manual secondaries. Maybe you try that on a GK, for example. You still retain the 5 heals, the concealment, the fire prevention. You still retain that tank build-esque here, and we still retain manual secondaries now. That's really cool, because before, you had to choose 5 heals, concealment, fire prevention, or manual secondaries, right? On a ship like Kurfürst now, we still get 5 heals, we still get concealment, we still get fire prevention, and we still get manual secondaries. You get all of it. You just now can't take long-range secondaries, because now you got to choose between AR, the 5th heal, and your secondary range. So there are still trade-offs here, keep in mind. But for my money, I do think this is more powerful. Sure, we only get 9.2 here instead of the 11 kilometers we would normally get if we were taking this here. But I think having that extra heal when we need it is very nice, or just retaining concealment, 14.3, much more comfortable. Of course, carriers in the game, concealment doesn't matter. I fully am with you, but I think there's enough games where you're going to use concealment to get a surprise salvo that it's going to be worth it. Maybe something like Kremlin here. I should probably go through them all for you and just look at different options here. Preventative maintenance here is a new skill, a little bit buffed. It's not a new skill. It's been buffed to allow you to have secondary battery survivability and AA mount survivability. Very nice on secondary battleships like GK and Ohio. Schlieffen as well. but also on something like a Kremlin, which has a massive nerf to its AA mounts. They don't really show it here, but the actual HP of these AA mounts is it's basically 0. That's been one of the major nerfs to Kremlin very quickly after it came out. So even though the AA looks good on paper, you lose all of it right away anytime someone spams HE at you. So this helps. Doesn't help enough though. I have tested it. They still die a little bit too quickly. But for a Kremlin, bow tanking, pushing in, 40% cooldown on that damage control and that heal is pretty powerful when a carrier is striking you. Now you're going to get an extra heal here from this upgrade as soon as you get 2 million potential damage, which is pretty easy to do in a Kremlin. So that's going to get you up to 4 heals. Remember, Kremlin only gets 3 heals base. But then we're also still going to take Emergency Repair Expert, getting us up to 5 damage controls and now 5 heals. So it's a 5 heal Kremlin now because of this improved repair party stacking with Emergency Repair Expert. And keep in mind, Kremlin doesn't have the fast cooldown on the heals, so it's going to take you a long time to get to that 5th heal. But oftentimes Kremlin can get there just because it is so ridiculously tanky when you keep it bow in. Still taking fire prevention though, don't you worry. I still believe this is the single most impactful tank skill for battleships. If you want to be pushing, if you want to be playing anywhere somewhat close to HE spammers at all, you kind of just have to have fire prevention. And we're still going to take Furious, actually, because Kremlin's concealment is so good, we don't even need to take one of the concealment upgrades, and we still get below 15 kilometer detection. AR is still going to work great here. So you got a very, very tanky Kremlin with even more HP now, and I think that can be very good. Let's see, Yamato. Keep in mind, my standard build here, I said, you can take whatever 1 and 2 point skills you want to. So even though I really like this skill, okay? I would love to take it on every single one of my battleships. Every single one of my ships, honestly. If I could take this skill for 2 points, keep in mind, 2 points to get me that situational 40% cooldown whenever a carrier focuses me, that's awesome. But there are some ships where it's just too much to give up. Yamato is one of them. Grease the gears is just required. Without grease the gears, it's 69 seconds. That is a long time for these turrets to be traversing. 57 is still extremely long. It's very uncomfortable, but I think this is necessary. And Yamato can stay a little further back too. It's not pushing as much, so I think it doesn't necessarily need that as much as maybe I'm pushing more in a Montana, for example. But, you know, we're still retaining 5 heals, retaining the concealment, retaining fire prevention, getting 10% reload when Furious is active. It's a really good build, I think. I'm still going to play with it some more, but I've played a lot of Battleship over the last few days, and I do think these are going to be some really, really nice skills to have. Vermont. What do we have for Vermont? Well, pretty much the same thing. Vermont has actually pretty good AA, so we're actually going to keep those alive, or try to. Gunfeeder, less useful on a Vermont just because you're shooting HE or AP all the time. You're not really going with the HE. Consumable Specialist does start to interest me as soon as we have 2 consumables, but these aren't as impactful, especially spotter plane. We already have a ton of range anyway. It's really only once we get over to a Bourgogne that might start to be useful for me. Keep in mind, they don't impact your heal or your damage control. They are separate skills. But hey, 40% cooldown to all consumables when a carrier is striking you. Pretty nice to have. Also, the improved repair party and readiness. Ohio and Vermont both have that fast cooldown heal, keep in mind. So you could actually run the 6 heal setup, maybe giving up concealment because the concealment's so OP already. You could run a 6 heal Vermont and get some really nice value out of that. Maybe you decide to let a few more fires burn on you, get that reload down a little bit more. That could be a really good build. In fact, I might actually just swap to that right now. It sounds kind of interesting to me. So that next time I play my Vermont, I'll be trying that out myself. So you'll get up to those 6 heals, fast cooldown, keep in mind here. And then, yeah, with the reload being so bad, you just get a free 10% by just letting a fire burn on you almost all the time. We still don't want to eat 2 fires or 3 fires without fire prevention. Keep that in mind. I still don't get baited by Furious. I always called Furious bait before because it was just baiting you into leaving fires burning when they shouldn't, and you die quicker because of it, and you're not getting the more value because you're just dead. Your ship's gone. Instead of your ship being alive and able to impact the game later. Also keep in mind, super heavy AP shells. Vermont might be one of the ships that this could work on. The other one being possibly St. Vincent. But even still, guys, I just don't see it working. I think it's just bait. I really do. The salvos are already crushing enough, let's be honest. The thing that's going to keep you from dev strikes is not 7.5% alpha, it's an aim bug or something like that, right? That's my opinion on it. Okay, we looked at Kremlin, we looked at Kurfürst, but just again, this does apply to Preußen as well, for example, German battleships. Bit of a hybrid build, but hey, we can definitely go into long-range secondaries, full secondary build if we want to, and have some good results there as well. Schlieffen did not actually change for me, except, no, we were still running this, right? We're still running preventive maintenance, but hey, 15% more survivability on our secondaries is pretty nice. We're still taking IFHE, we're still taking full secondaries, we're still taking AR, we're still taking emergency repair expert. Notice no fire prevention here. That's because of the fast damage controls on this thing. And it's a relatively small ship too. It's not gigantic, so that it doesn't have those humongous 2 fires on its superstructure here. They're pretty small, so a little harder to hit, but also the faster damage control is very nice to have. We only get 4 heals here too, so you could try to run this to get up to 5 heals, much like a Kremlin might, but Schlieffen is a more full send it in and hope it works out. Less of a, okay, let me tank, let me try and manage my healing as much as I can. And then a concealment, I mean, you could try to run F fire prevention instead, but the gimmick of this ship really is secondaries match your concealment range. So we're going to keep it like that. So Schlieffen really didn't change much for me. Conquer, you're going to see that tomorrow. Get like 300k in this thing. Managed to survive like 3 million potential damage or something ridiculous like that. So pretty tanky. I was running in that, you'll see, I was running the full thing. Just trying to limit test with, I think, what do you get up to? 6 heals here with Cunningham? Something like that. Yeah, so... yeah, 2 kills, you get another heal. You get another heal for 2 million potential damage, and then you get a heal here. So you can get up to 6 heals in Conqueror, but I don't think that's worth it. So this is the build that I think I'm going to settle on with Conqueror for now. Furious is very useful, but again, guys, even on a super heal battleship, I'm still taking fire prevention. If you use your heal, you're out of your main defensive power on a Conqueror for a full, what? 60, is it 60 seconds on this thing, or is it 80? I forget if they buffed it or not. No, it's the full 80. Yeah, so 80 seconds base. That's a long time for a battleship with less than 90k HP. Like, this is a low HP tier 10 battleship with only 32 mil of armor. You can die very quickly if you use your super heal. Let's see, you heal back up to even 70k HP using your super heal. But your damage controls got down and you've used your super heal. That can happen a lot just by over pushing even slightly, getting caught out. And then what? You get lit on a double fire and that 70k HP goes by quick. I've been bursted down that quick in between my heals many a times trying to be a little more aggressive in the Conqueror. And I understand most people aren't aggressive in a Conqueror. Let's be honest here, they always camp the back. But for me, if you are trying to play like me or try and play a little closer, have a little more battle impact, yeah, fire prevention on Conqueror is a must, in my opinion. But there you go. That is that build. Vincent, I mean, you can try it. I might try it myself some more, but man, it just feels like bait. It really, really does. We're still going to take Brisk, though. I think that's a pretty strong skill, but I might swap over to the AA defense one, man. 40% cooldown when you're focused by the carrier, which is when you need your consumables back. That's good, man. It's really, really good. Also, I've seen some confusion. I apologize for not explaining this sooner. We're a little long into this video for me to explain this, but think of your consumable reload like a cup filling up with water, okay? And you have a watering hose or a tap that you're dumping water in, and it takes, well, for a heal, normally it takes 80 seconds for it to fill up completely with water, and then that is when you can use your consumable again. Think of this skill as allowing, only when your AA is active, but allowing the tap to open 40% further. I think. Percentages are weird, okay? But it might be slightly different than that because of the math, because it's reducing the reload by 40%, not increasing the rate gained by 40%. But Think of it as you can open the tap further by a certain percentage, whether it's 40 or not. Math people will let me know. Thank you in the comments. I see you. But the specifics don't matter for this analogy. The analogy is that during that portion when your AA is active, you get the opportunity to open the tap up much further than you normally would, but you can't do it multiple times of that same amount. Some people have kind of been talking about that as maybe you can activate this skill twice, right? Of, oh, the planes come in and out of your AA a couple times, maybe you get 40 or 80% cooldown. No, that's not how it works. It's only opening the tap up, let's just say 40% more, for the duration that the planes are in your AA zone. And then it closes up again. But the instant a plane comes back in, it opens up even further again. I didn't explain that the best, but I am... I still find it a little confusing, or trying to explain it well is difficult with percentages and all that. But yeah, just think of it as I'm opening up a tap to fill up this cup of my consumable reload that much faster when AA is around. I hope that makes sense. And that's why I think it's so good, though, because it just activates on any sort of AA activation. So anybody wants to throw their ASWs at you, hey, free 40% cooldown for a little bit. I'll take it. The carrier comes around, fighter planes are in the area, airstrikes from the Dutch cruisers, anything like that is just going to activate that cooldown, which is really, really nice to have. Keep in mind, you can also sector your AA. So a bit of a big brain move is if it's not a carrier strike, okay, carrier strikes always sector your AA to deal with the strike, okay? They're not going to die, trust me. But if it's a fighter plane, if it's ASWs, sector your AA to the opposite side. That way those planes survive longer, giving you longer to take advantage of this cooldown reduction. See what I mean? Right? So this is just going to help you get those consumables back even faster. It's more to remember. It's a small thing that you can do. You can also just not touch your AA, but that is something you could do to help those planes survive longer, giving you that cooldown benefit even longer. Thunderer, I think I'm just using the same build. Yeah, I would probably just use the same build here as the Conqueror. Bourgogne and Republic. We'll do Republic. I think just running the standard build as well. You don't really want to go secondaries. These ships are just too squishy to be in secondary range, and they don't have the improved accuracy. Not even of like the GK level. Certainly not of Schlieffen and Ohio level. So even though they do get the range, I don't find them all that valuable, especially because you die so quickly. So really taking concealment is very nice. Getting you those surprise salvos every once in a while. Getting that 5th heal when you need it. Certain games you won't use it, but this will give you the 5th heal in the games that you want it. FP, always nice to have. And then Furious, just giving us that 10% reload buff, which on a Republic, let's be honest, that's pretty insane. Sub 20-second reload very easily. It's very strong. I think that build works out quite well. And on the Bourgogne, if you bring it over, it's possible you might want Consumable Specialist here. This is like the only one. But for me, I'm only going to take one point skill. And especially in Bourgogne with small caliber guns, it's nice to be able to swap over to the HE when you need to shoot at bow-in battleships. Swapping over quicker is nice. So I would rather have that than getting a little bit quicker to our reload booster and our speed boost. You could debate maybe dropping one of these 4-pointers or a 3-pointer, but I don't think it's worth it. I think these are much, much more impactful. Colombo, not a good ship, but hey, bit of reload certainly can help this thing out. Maybe you're taking Furious now, and that is your 10% reload when you're on fire. And now instead of taking reload mod, maybe you take range mod, and now you have finally like a normal tier 10 battleship range. I still don't think it's gonna be good, but maybe that helps you out. Hey, maybe when the carrier's on you and you get 40% cooldown towards your smoke, maybe that helps you out a little bit. That said, Brisk and Grease the Gears are both excellent on Colombo, as is Vigilance. So maybe you just want to drop Furious, still retain your normal tank build of 5 heals, Concealment Expert, and Fire Prevention. But now you get to take both Brisk and Grease the Gears, or Brisk and Vigilance, or Vigilance and Grease the Gears, whatever you want to. on those lower points. Could be interesting, but I still think Columbo's going to be not a great ship. So there you go. Those are the thoughts for battleships. I will quickly discuss the cruiser and destroyers just briefly after this, but let me know what you think about the battleship build. What are you going to be running as your standard build? I'm trying to throw this one together a little quicker. Haven't tested everything out as extensively, but hey, new captain skills are always fun. Unfortunately, we only got 1 week to take a look at them, and they kind of hid where you have to apply to get access to that respec. So hopefully you guys had fun testing it over this week, and unfortunately you do have to commit to something. I'm very, very fortunate as, you know, a CC getting all these insane resources, but I know, guys, grinding up, I did the grinds way back in the day. I know respecking all the time is simply not feasible, as well as having a bunch of 21-point commanders. Most people don't have that. So that's where I think going with this normal 17-point build is really, really nice to start with. It's going to work most of the time on most of these battleships. And for the ones that it won't be as good on, well, you already know that you're going for a full secondary build on a Schlieffen anyway. So, but these are just for like the Montana types. The normal battleship types is what I'm going for here. Now then, let's talk about cruisers very, very briefly, because not a lot has changed here. Napoli obviously wants to take advantage of Pack-a-Punch, right? Our secondaries are unbelievable. I'm sure you guys saw the video last week, but if you didn't, the secondaries are just crazy. Go look at that video. It's like 115k secondary damage in a single game. Just ridiculous. Very, very strong ship to take that on. But Napoli is basically the only one that it's worthwhile taking on. As far as cruisers with improved accuracy on the secondaries, it's Napoli and Pensacola. And Pensacola secondaries aren't good enough to be taking a full build on. And that's a low tier ship. So who has like a 21-point commander on it anyway? And you're not building into that into future tiers anyway. So I will say I did test it out, and I think I got like 150k Kraken games. You might see that a little bit later on the channel. That could be fun to watch maybe, but the secondaries didn't really input anything. Napoli, they certainly did. Other things you might be looking and considering is maybe the Marseille. This thing actually does have some improved accuracy on the secondaries, not nearly as much as a Napoli. And because of that, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be worth it. These things do have a really high fire chance, but I will say I haven't tested it yet, okay? Just haven't had time because we've got a very tight deadline here to get this video out so I can kind of recommend something normal to you guys. And battleships were the thing that took the biggest change. So maybe Marseille is good enough for it. You guys will have to let me know in the comments below. Perhaps we will test that at some point. I did test the Schroeder though. And what I found with Schroeder, which has similar accuracy to the Marseille, is that the extra range doesn't help us that much because these secondaries aren't accurate enough to just reliably hit at this 12-kilometer range. It's hilarious, don't get me wrong. 12-kilometer range on a cruiser for secondaries is just really funny. But they just don't hit much at that range. So what I found with Schroeder and how it's been very strong with secondaries is when you're really close to someone. Sub 6 kilometers, right? In ranked. I did a video on that even where I like won a game in like 3 minutes or something like that with this ship because you just full sended it in, and then at those 5-kilometer ranges, the secondary DPM actually matters because you can actually hit things. But the reason secondaries still aren't going to be good a lot of the time here is there's no way to buff the accuracy, right? Battleships have skills that buff accuracy. On the commander, it's like a 60% accuracy buff, assuming you fully activate it. Here, though, there's just none of that. So you're missing out quite a bit. And the only reason Napoli is so good is it just has baked in that 60% or whatever buff that the secondaries would have on battleships. So that's why this one is so good. It just bakes in the manual secondary skill, essentially. And it doesn't have a cooldown or a wind-up time. So that's why Napoli's just so ridiculously scary, especially now. I don't know why they buffed this thing, but remember how we removed manual secondaries from battleships and changed it out for this new skill that has this incredibly long lead up time? Yeah, let me just show you guys. So we removed this skill and changed it. Well, they just changed it. They didn't remove it, but they changed it. So you only get a permanent 10% dispersion buff, and then you have a situational 50% buff. It takes 45 seconds to increase. Well, the reason for that is a destroyer pops out from his smoke or around an island, and it got one shot by secondaries even at longer ranges. And that wasn't the most engaging thing. So I think it was a decent change to do this. But Napoli didn't get that change. And Napoli doesn't have HE secondaries. It has SAP secondaries. It just absolutely maul anything they touch. 26, only going to do superstructures for the most part. It's going to just destroy destroyers, though. Like, DDs are just done with these smaller ones. But these big caliber ones, 42 mil, yeah, not a lot is shattering that. It is very, very, very powerful. And there's just no lead up time. So Napoli, even more OP than it already was. And every other cruiser doesn't get a benefit from this skill. That's my opinion. Now, some other skills that got changed for cruisers, they also get consumable specialist, and generally cruisers have much better, more impactful consumables. So for 1 point, having every consumable except for your heal and your damage control have a 7.5% better reload is very powerful. I don't know why it's not highlighting. There we go. And then, of course, you can have that be 10% on certain special commanders. So very, very powerful on a lot of cruisers. So I can see that being a nice and impactful skill. They also changed the AA skills. Focus fire training is similar to the 4-point or 3-point skill for battleships, which didn't get much of a buff, so not much change there. Unfortunately for cruisers, the battleship skill that's 2 points that I like so much is 4 points on a cruiser. And I think that's a little too expensive. It's a fun skill, but it's a very situational skill. A lot of people think I'm even overrating the 2-pointer skill on battleships. I personally don't think so, especially given how, you know, if you're someone who gets focused by CVs, you know who you are, your play style, your whoever you are. It's really, really good if you're that guy. But if you're a cruiser, there's too many points. Like, this is just too much to invest. It is 50% here instead of 40%. So maybe we'll try some builds surrounding this. And again, like I said, cruisers do have some very powerful consumables, but a situational skill like this that costs 4 points, it's a lot to ask. 3 points, I'd probably take it. But 4, I don't know, even 3 points. There's so many good skills. Like, there's so many good skills. It's hard. It's hard to justify that one for me personally. But again, it does require some more testing. I haven't had enough time to really test out the cruisers too much, but I don't think this one's going to change too many builds. There'll be a few that like it situationally, but not too many. And then, of course, we get the couple DD changes. Preventive maintenance has changed just like battleships. Not that impactful here. It still is 30% to your main armaments, which was normal. And really the only benefit here is going to be for your AA mount survivability. And for a lot of DDs, that doesn't matter as much. If you've taken enough HE damage that your AA mounts have been blown off your ship's probably sinking to the bottom of the ocean. Let's be honest. So not as big of a change. You're still taking it to keep your main guns and your torps alive. That's why you're taking it. This hasn't really changed much to me. The other thing is Dazzle, something I've never taken on a destroyer. Maybe I tried it once, but something I didn't find that impactful. 8% speed for 15 seconds after your initial spot could be beneficial as well, alongside that 20% nerf to enemy dispersion. I don't know. It's 4 points, guys. That's a lot to spend, man. I'm losing a lot of DPM, right? We're giving up a lot of DPM over that. We're maybe giving up some survivability expert, superintendent, especially on DDs that have heals. I don't know. A lot to give up for a very situational thing that, honestly, if you're positioning right, like, okay, this might sound bad. Okay, don't take offense. Okay, it's mostly meant as a joke. But if Dazzle's what's going to be the difference between you living and not, maybe you're out of position. Huh? Maybe you're just not reading the map right. Okay? There you go. I said it. There you go. Be mad at me. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be worth it for 4 points. But who knows? I could be wrong. There could be situations. But again, I haven't tested it yet. So those are my thoughts so far on the Commander rework. Mainly wanted to talk about battleships. As you know, bit of a battleship player. I do think this is my favorite class, even though it frustrates me to no end all the time. Still my favorite class and the one I play the most, and the one that got the most changes. So we had to talk about these skills. Again, before we go, that's the build. Just again, keep in mind, I don't really care which 1 and 2 point skills you take. Take whatever you prefer. I really am trying to sell you on this one just because I had so much fun with it recently, and it has saved my life multiple times over the last few days. But really it comes down to the 3 and 4 pointers. I think The first 3-pointer you should get is Adrenaline Rush, because this skill is just amazing. It's just always in every build for a good reason. It's just so good. And the first 4-pointer you should get, probably Fire Prevention, honestly. It's just that good at keeping you alive. It's basic, it's boring, but not having a second fire point on your superstructure is massive. Everybody wants to farm a battleship because of the superstructure. The superstructure is so easy to farm. DD guns, cruiser guns. Most of them aren't penning your hull. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. Everybody aims for superstructure when they're farming. So reducing the number of fires by half. You're essentially, sure, it says risk of catching fire and maximum number of fires -1. It looks small, but effectively, it's reducing the number of fires on your ship by 50%. You can take bow and stern fires. They're pretty rare though. But this just is a very, very potent skill. Concealment, really good for those concealed shots, surprise shots, but hey, you can go for other things too. A lot of flexibility here, but for those 17 points, you're still getting 5 heals, you're still getting concealment, you're still getting fire prevention, you're still getting AR. You're still getting that for 17 points, the old basic standard battleship build that I would always recommend. And I think that's cool. Reducing the price slightly, giving you a little more skills to be a little freer with some more interesting damage upgrades, secondaries, furious, that kind of thing. Really cool. And super heavy AP, still just bait. I was really looking forward to the fire reduction per tick instead of time, but they put it on a skill that increased the time by too much for it to be worthwhile. Unfortunate. Maybe we'll see that added to basic survivability, 15%. Instead, imagine they changed basic survivability. Instead of 15% reduced time, 15% reduced tick damage. Ooh, that would be an interesting change. That would be cool. But hey, maybe that will be a different rework. Really cool to see this rework or small-ish change to consumables. They didn't change every class, just mainly battleships here, but this is a really fun bit of time to just experiment and test for me. Unfortunately, it was only a week that they gave us these free respecs, but I had a lot of fun with it. Personally, I think it'd be really cool if they did this for a few skills on a few of the tech trees, right? So if we did a few skills for battleships, cruisers, and destroyers every 6 months, let's say. Every 6 months, we just shake up a few of the skills. You don't have to do as many battleship skills, but do a few more cruiser and DD ones to make it a little more even. And then give us 2 weeks to mess around every 6 months. I think that would be pretty fresh. I think that would bring a lot of enjoyment to the game, and it would keep things a little more interesting, just because we don't get into this situation where everyone runs the same build, everyone plays the same playstyle, and everyone just knows exactly what's going to happen, and it gets a little boring at times. So that would be my suggestion to Wargaming. Also, don't hide the respecs. Come on, man. Like, that's just... Oh, it's so lame, man. Just so anti-consumer, especially because you had it as a free addition to everyone's accounts before. It wasn't opt-in before, and now you made it opt-in. That's so lame. Those are my 2 suggestions to Wargaming. Change those 2 things. Add these little mini respecs or changes every 6 months to keep the game fresh. And just, you don't have to be that slimy, all right? Don't leave every player out of this Captain Respec by hiding the respecs in a little hidden submenu that you don't even have a pop-up for. You give me a pop-up for every single little premium added to the shop, every new loot box for me to gamble on, and you're not going to give me a pop-up for the free respecs that let me have some fun in the game? Come on, be better. You can do it, Wargaming, I believe. There we go. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.